So let's begin just with a definition. What is mindfulness? Excuse me. So this word mindfulness is a translation of a Sanskrit word that is a translation of even a word in another language, the Pali language, which is the language that the Buddhist texts were recorded in over 2,500 years ago. And I'll say a little bit more about that in a few moments. Literally, the word mindfulness means to remember. The translation of the word sati or smrti, to remember. What is it we're remembering? This is what I hope to talk about with you today, because it's on the surface very simple, and I hope that you will see in your own life and exploration that the more we explore and investigate this practice, this contemplative practice, the deeper it goes. So fundamentally, we are remembering to be aware, to be awake, and to have perspective on our life. So mindfulness, one of the ways I like to define it is as the process of paying attention to what's happening right now in a curious, open, and balanced way. So I'll say that again. Mindfulness is the process of paying attention to what's happening right now in a curious, open, and balanced way. So there are two components to this definition. The first is awareness. So we are aware of what's happening in our own mind and body and environment right now in the present moment. However, that is not enough to be mindfulness, because we can be aware of something. We can know that something is happening, for example, a pain in our body, someone being upset and angry with us, raising their voice, perhaps a situation in our environment or community, and still be lost and consumed with some kind of a reaction. We might be lost in fear. We might be spinning with confusion. We might be overwhelmed by anger or greed or bitterness. And of course, these reactions complicate our relationship to what's happening and make it harder for us to relate to whatever is occurring internally or externally from a place of clarity, from a place of more balance and also more wisdom about how we respond. So where does mindfulness come from? How is it that I come to be here today? I am a middle-class Jewish kid from New Jersey, northeastern United States. I live in California. How did this all come to be? So as I mentioned earlier, the practice of mindfulness as we know it today has its roots in the Buddhist tradition. One of the things that's been very interesting for me to explore over the years, and that has been a big topic within the modern mindfulness movement, and certainly the scientific research and movement connected to mindfulness, is this question of, is this a religion? You know, are we teaching Buddhism in some kind of veiled way? And I think that there are going to be a number of speakers speaking directly to this issue from different perspectives. From my view, there is a very important difference between what we could call religion, organized religion, and spirituality. Spirituality and what we could call contemplative practice. So religion often involves some kind of organized body, hierarchy, and the need to profess certain beliefs. You have to sign up for something on a question of faith. And there's often sacred texts that are revered. So none of that is the case with mindfulness. Mindfulness practice is an invitation to explore our own mind and body in a very direct and empirical way. contemplative practice, if we consider it as a contemplative practice, it's a process of reflecting, a process of stepping back, and on the one hand, observing what's happening, again, internally and externally, and on the other hand, coming into relationship with whatever's happening in our own mind and body, and in our environment and communities, in a particular way, with balance, with clarity, and with compassion. So what we are talking about here is the cultivation of universal humanistic values. Clear seeing, balance, patience, generosity, compassion, kindness, and the capacity to be aware in the present moment and understand what's happening. This is a universal capacity that all humans have, to be aware, to be awake, to have perspective, to care about ourselves and others. No religion owns that. One of the core practices, one of the core kind of techniques or exercises within mindfulness as a contemplative practice is paying attention to your breath. There are many ways to practice mindfulness, the breath being one of them. Is there anything particularly sectarian about breathing? This is something we all do as human beings. Another perspective on mindfulness that I greatly value is that it opens the door to a connection with our spiritual nature as human beings. We all have various needs as human beings. We have basic physiological needs for water, air, food, shelter. We have relational needs for things like connection, belonging, community, understanding, love, empathy, play, touch. This is part of being a mammal, right? It's shared by all mammals, these relational needs as part of the limbic brain. But we also have higher needs. We have spiritual needs. We have needs for meaning, for purpose, for a sense of understanding our role, ourself, in the context of the world, to make sense of what's happening. We have a deep need to be connected, not just to ourselves and other people, but to life. So mindfulness, this practice of paying attention to what's happening in the present moment and investigating our relationship with it, opens the doorway to a deeper understanding of what it is to be human. And this is what drew me to mindfulness practice. So I asked this question earlier: why am I sitting here speaking with all of you several thousand miles away on a Friday morning in California, Friday afternoon in the Adriatic region, about this practice that has come to our modern world? It's fascinating history for those who are interested to study it. I'll just touch ever so briefly on it. But essentially, in the 1800s, some Buddhist practitioners from India and Sri Lanka traveled to the West, to other parts of the world. The World Parliament of Religions in the 1890s, I think, was an important event with someone named Anagarika Dharmapala who came. And Buddhism started to spread to the West, the ideas, the philosophy, the practice of it. Fast forward about 75 years, in the late 20th century, a whole bunch of people from the West, from North America, from Europe, traveled to Asia, Southeast Asia, and started doing these practices and realized that there's tremendous benefit for addressing human suffering within the context of the practices, the contemplative practices, this inner technology of understanding the mind and body that had been developed over millennia in the Buddhist tradition. So some of these individuals bring meditation practice back to Europe, to Germany, to the United States, to Canada, Mexico, Brazil at some point, and begin integrating it into modern society. In the 1970s, Jon Kabat-Zinn was one of the first pioneers to begin to translate the core secular practices from Buddhism into an accessible method in a secular way for the rest of society. And this was in a medical context. So mindfulness-based stress reduction, MBSR, was the first iteration of secular mindfulness. It was researched and proven to have immense benefits for chronic pain patients in the reduction of pain. This was a real key turning point in the history of modern mindfulness. From there, mindfulness spreads, and I'm going to just fast forward here very quickly. Mindfulness spreads from the medical field to the mental health field. At the same time, there's an explosion in research around the neuroscience behind mindfulness practice. It begins to spread to education, and from there to the business sector, to the wellness sector, and beyond to where we are today. So I started practicing mindfulness in the late 1990s as a college student. I was doing my undergraduate work actually as an English major, and facing what I would call ordinary human suffering, nothing extreme or drastic. My parents were getting divorced. I had broken up with my girlfriend. I had falling out with a series of friends that I was connected to at the age of 18. I was using a lot of drugs and kind of losing my way. Again, nothing earth-shattering in terms of human suffering. I wasn't living in a war zone, you know. I wasn't near death with illness. But enough suffering, enough challenge and emotional pain and confusion at that age of young adulthood that I felt like I needed to understand myself and what was happening more. And I had the very good fortune of being able to apply for a study abroad program in India. I had some other connections with India through conversations with friends and some of the teachers of courses I was taking at Columbia at the time. And I decided to go study abroad and get away from everything I knew, and it changed my life. One of the first things that one of the two meditation teachers that I first trained with said to us, that to this day has had a lot of relevance and meaning for me, and that I think really summarizes some of the essence of the spirit behind mindfulness. He said, if you want to understand your mind, sit down and observe it. It's so simple. It's so basic and clear. If there's a problem we want to solve, we need to study it. Whether that problem is fixing a broken watch, repairing a screen or a window or a car, or healing our own heart, understanding our own mind, deepening our awareness of the precious gift of being alive, understanding what it is to be human, to be born into this body in a realm of both beauty and violence, in a realm of change and insecurity, with the potential for tremendous acts of generosity and compassion. What is this miraculous, sudden, dreamlike experience we are all sharing? If we want to know and understand this, we need some method. We need some tool to investigate, to observe, to explore what it is to be human, what it is to be awake, what it is to have a body and a mind, to feel, to lose, to gain, to connect. So mindfulness provides a training ground for deepening our understanding of these questions. And mindfulness practice has two key parts. So on the one hand, if we want to study, observe, and understand some problem, phenomenon, or situation, we need to settle our attention. We need to be able to observe, and to be able to observe, there has to be a capacity to be present and stay with the thing. If I'm wanting to learn, I'm reaching for my watch. I don't have my watch with me. If I'm wanting to learn how a broken watch operates and fix it, if every 2 minutes I get up and do something else, I'm never going to learn. I have to spend time with it, look at it, study it, play with it. The story about an anthropologist or biologist, Cynthia Moss, I think, who studied elephants in the African Sahara. Elephant society, elephant interactions language. 20 years she spent living on the savannah, observing them closely every day before she really started to understand how complex elephant society and interactions were. If we want to understand something, we need to spend time with it. We need to be able to observe it. So the first part of mindfulness practice is gathering our attention, stabilizing our internal energies so that we can focus and actually observe the moment-to-moment unfolding of this mind and body. This is one part: settling, calming, stabilizing our attention, gathering and collecting. And this in and of itself is healing. There are tremendous benefits that come from just this first part of mindfulness practice. It improves our focus and attention, which has a host of benefits in terms of our capacity to contribute to this world. It improves resilience to stress. In the very process of learning to focus our attention, we learn how to let go and begin again, over and over and over again, which is an essential life skill. Not only that, but this process of counteracting the fragmentation, the profound dislocation of our attention in modern society, in and of itself is healing. It's a way of taking a break from the incessant pressure of getting things done and responding to stimuli in the world. The author Annie Lamott once said, almost everything will work again if you unplug it, including you. So gathering and collecting our intention is like a way of unplugging from the world temporarily and refreshing our hearts and minds. So this is the first part of mindfulness. The other part of mindfulness is once the heart and the mind begin to settle, begin to stabilize, now we have the capacity to really explore, to investigate. It's like having a powerful microscope where we can look, having a very powerful, kind of sensitive instrument that can feel, that can probe, that can receive, be in relationship with what's happening. So now we can begin to understand through the process of direct observation and experience, how does this mind and body work? How do we create extra, unnecessary distress, complication for ourselves and others in this world? The benefits of this process are profound in my experience. I want to just mention briefly 3 or 4 of the direct personal benefits and then talk a little bit about the potential for transformation relationally and socially that mindfulness offers to us. So in terms of personal benefits, mindfulness practice is a doorway to transformation and healing. I woke up this morning a little bit early. I woke up about 5 a.m., meditated for a little while in bed, did a little bit of reading, and I got up. I took a shower. I shaved today. I got dressed. I'm guessing most of you did something. I made a cup of tea, did something similar this morning. That you have some things that you do every day. You clean your teeth, you wash the body, you get dressed. And this allows us to function in the world, to do these very basic things every day. How often do we bathe and clean our mind and our heart? At the end of the day, do we know how to release the accumulated stress, confusion, irritation that may have occurred through small or large events over the course of a day, so that we don't carry those with us into our sleep, into the next day, into the next year? How much are we carrying in our mind and body from the past? How well have we developed the capacity to come to terms with often the difficult truth of the past in our own life, in our communities, well aware of the violence that is part of the history of the Adriatic region, the modern history there. So mindfulness practice it provides a way to clean, to attend to the mind and body in the same way that we attend to and care for the body. How does it do this? One of the ways is that mindfulness practice works by harnessing the property of neuroplasticity. So many of you are probably familiar with this. Neuroplasticity is the capacity of the brain to alter its shape and its function through repeated experience. Neuroplasticity is the property of the brain to alter its shape and its function through repeated experience. One of the analogies I like to use for this is it's like water running down a hillside. Every time you send a little water down that hillside, it starts to create a path. It creates a little channel through the earth. And the more water runs down that hillside, the deeper that channel gets until you have a stream or a river. Once you have a deep channel there, it's very difficult for the water to go in any direction. Well, our mind is like that. The more we do anything, the more we think or feel or react or relate in a particular way, it reinforces that particular neural pathway in our brain. So, over the course of a lifetime, we all accumulate a whole range of patterns. Some of them are helpful, some of them are not helpful. Patterns of stress, fear, self-centeredness, confusion, anger, greed. Mindfulness practice provides a process for understanding the functioning of those energies in our mind and beginning to shift them, to transform them. It has the innate property of slowly weakening the patterns in the mind that are unhealthy. There's something about clear awareness that when we see and recognize a pattern that is causing harm to ourselves or others, there's a natural tendency to withdraw attention and energy from it. And then there's the possibility of creating new patterns that are more beneficial. So this is one of the ways that mindfulness functions and helps us to live a better, more meaningful life and to have more of our resources available to contribute to our families, our community, our society, is by shaping the mind in the direction of more well-being, health and happiness. Another key benefit of mindfulness is it provides the capacity for us to live our values. The more aware we are, the more choice we have in our lives. So if I have a conversation with my partner and she does something that irritates me and I start to get upset or frustrated, if I'm not aware, I might raise my voice. I might speak in a way that's sharp or biting, and that would be painful for her, and it would lead to disconnection between us and would ultimately be painful for me. Now, if I'm aware in that moment of feeling the irritation, the frustration, I sense it in my own body. I feel the tightness, the pressure, the discomfort. Mindfulness gives me the space to attend to that and to make a different choice, to be able to take a breath and say, I'm feeling really reactive right now. Can we do this differently? can you stop talking for a moment? I'm starting to get upset. And I'm speaking from a place of clarity and love rather than from a place of habit, anger, reactivity. This is just one example. Most fundamentally, of all the things I've talked about so far, bringing more focus and attention, being able to be more resilient with stress, enhancing our well-being, shaping our mind, living our values, making wiser choices. One of the most profound and fundamental benefits that I experience from mindfulness, and that I think is really an offer, an invitation of this practice, is that it allows us to be present for our life. It means that we don't miss our life. So I'm in my mid-40s. Both of my parents, thank God, are still alive. My mom is 75, going on 76. My dad will be 80 this year. Their health is okay, but not great. We live 3,000 miles apart. They're on the East Coast, I'm in California. So when I talk to them on the phone, or when I have the opportunity to see them after the pandemic, how much am I present? How much am I relating to them from a place of reactivity based on the past? Am I able to really see them and appreciate the time that we have together while we have it? This is what mindfulness does. When we are aware and awake to the truth of our life, which is that it's changing, that everything is passing, every moment it's changing, and the future's uncertain. We don't take things for granted. We don't take the capacity to see or hear or breathe clean air for granted. We don't take the capacity to get up out of bed and walk for granted. We don't take our loved ones sitting across from us having a meal for granted, because we know that tomorrow they could be gone. Mindfulness gives us back our life. It lets us live with a quality of presence and awareness that adds richness and depth and meaning, and means that we don't have to live with regret, because we are awake from moment to moment and making conscious choices about how we live, rather than living from a place of habit. So what does it mean to live a mindful life? It means that we are connected to our potential as human beings, the immense potential that we have in this life, to be aware, to appreciate, to give, to bless, to contribute. So the benefits begin here in our own mind and body personally with how we live, but then they show up and are cultivated in relationship, how we speak to one another, how we speak to one another, how we respond when difficult things happen. We're able to come from a place of more wisdom, clarity, and compassion. In our communities, in our society, it gives us the internal resources and the mental clarity to apply our greatest gifts and energy to the most complex and challenging, pressing problems of our time, whether we're talking about the climate crisis, oppression and xenophobia, the legacies of violence and hatred that exist between ethnic groups, different nations. We need all of our resources to attend to those problems, and we need to be able to process our own feelings, to stay clear, to understand the relationships and the causes between things. Mindfulness practice is not enough to heal those dynamics, but it is an essential ingredient to be able to stay engaged and balanced within them. It allows us to be aware of and stay connected to our deep, natural, innate capacity for empathy as human beings, which is one of the core guiding values of nonviolence. To be able to see the humanity of others even as they demonize us. that takes tremendous strength. That takes tremendous commitment and internal resources. And mindfulness can be one of those resources. There's a whole science of behavior change that really knows a lot about how to support us to integrate new behaviors. And mindfulness practice is a behavior. It's something we do. Some of the key insights from that are one, that it's easier to make behavior change habit when we know what we do want rather than what we don't want. So to have a sense of why we're doing something and what it will bring to us, rather than the judgment and the I should and I'm not good enough and how come I don't. So noticing the blame, the judgment, that inner voice, and seeing if we can transform that to, well, why do I want to do this? Oh, I want to feel more aware in my life. I want to be present for my loved ones. I want to have more focus and energy at work. So really identifying what are the needs in your own heart and mind that you are wanting to meet, and reflecting on those so that you feel how important they are to establish the motivation. This is an important part. Another important part is making small doable goals. So we might think, I have to practice mindfulness for half an hour, and then we wake up, I don't have half an hour, so we don't do it at all. Well, what if it were 2 minutes? Do you have 2 minutes? Do you have 5 minutes? So it's important to make the goals really doable and realistic, and to set like a minimum for ourselves, to say, I want to do at least this much, and really focus on the continuity from day to day, week to week, rather than the quantity. So even if you can close your eyes and follow your breath for 2 minutes, that's better than not doing it at all. It provides some capacity. Brushing your teeth for 1 minute is better than not brushing your teeth at all for a week, right? Brushing your teeth for 30 seconds every day versus not doing it for a week and then brushing your teeth for an hour on Saturday. Right? So just to have that sense of doing it a little bit when you can. It's also important for me to recognize that mindfulness practice is not just about, sitting still and closing your eyes and following your breathing. It's about how we live. So there are many ways to integrate mindfulness into our life by just finding small moments during the day to be more awake. So if you like to have a hot drink in the morning, you make some coffee or tea or something, make that kind of like a ritual. Try to be really present. Notice the smells and the sounds. When you start drinking that cup of hot tea or coffee, really be there for it and make that something you do every day. Or if you walk to work or to the bus or to the train, make that walk part of your mindfulness practice so that you're aware, you're feeling your body, you're noticing the sounds, the temperature, the quality of the air, so you're awake. That becomes part of our mindfulness practice. So there are ways to integrate it into our life that don't take any more time, but that give us a lot more opportunity to connect with mindfulness. Remember, mindfulness has these two components, awareness and balance. So the key is checking if we're balanced. So if some emotion or difficult memory or uncomfortable sensation comes up in the body, if you're able to be balanced with it, which means we are not spinning, we're not tightening, resisting, getting afraid, like excessively afraid or angry, we're aware of it, we feel it, and we're okay, we're relatively okay with it. There might be some reactivity that comes and goes, that's fine, but we're not getting consumed by the experience. Then it's fine to just pay attention to it, to just keep observing it. However, if, as you're pointing to, it's frightening, we feel overwhelmed, we start to freeze, it's too much, then absolutely there's not enough balance. So we're not actually being mindful of it. So then the practice is to actually move your attention away to something more neutral or pleasant. So it could be feeling your hands, just being aware of the sensations in your hands. It could be noticing sound. It could be opening the eyes and just looking around, being aware of seeing, particularly if it's a very strong emotion or memory, until we come back to balance. And then, as you said, we want to just do small bits. We feel it for a little bit, then we take a break. And we feel it for a little bit, then we take a break, so that we can integrate it slowly. Can mindfulness help me if I am not in tune with my emotions? Absolutely. Yes, it can. By paying attention to your breath, by doing a body scan, feeling your body, and simply having the intention to feel more of your emotions. So you can say to yourself every morning when you wake up, I would like to feel my emotions. I'm available to feel my emotions. At the end of the day before you go to bed, if there's anything that I need to feel, I'm here. You just send that message to your own psyche. And then the mindfulness practice begins to connect your awareness with your physical experience, which opens the doorway to feeling more emotions. So I hope that's helpful. And it takes time, so be patient. Be patient. You spoke about cleansing your mind at the end of the day. How does one do that? So mindfulness practice is a practice for kind of releasing things that have been accumulated in the body and in the mind. So if you do some mindfulness practice at the end of the day, as you practice, you may notice that your shoulders are hunched up, and you start to release them, and you notice clenching your jaw, and you start to release that, and you notice so the physical body can start to unwind, to relax, and then there can also be a process, a similar parallel process in the mind of unwinding. This is a natural process. Our job is simply to provide the conditions internally and externally for that process to unfold. Our nervous system is built with an innate healing capacity to process very difficult events. However, that can only function when the conditions are right. We need to feel safe physically and emotionally in the present moment. There needs to be enough time and space, a certain quality of interest, paying attention, and a quality of kindness, of care. And so we cultivate those qualities within the mindfulness practice, and then simply hold a space of awareness. We're awake, we're present, there's a quality of friendliness towards ourselves, and then things can unwind on their own. The different thoughts and problems and conversations from the day can come into awareness, and the knots can untangle on their own, just observing that process and feeling what occurs with it. So I hope that's helpful. How long does one mindfulness course last? Can it be learned fast, or is it a long-term process? I love this question. Thank you for asking it. So 2 or 3 things I want to say. So number one, I appreciate the question because I don't know what it's like in the Adriatic region, but here in the United States where I live, the whole dominant culture, the advertising industry, the media, everything is focused on better, bigger, faster, right? If you can, give me the whole thing as quickly as possible so I can be efficient and move on to the next thing. So there's something very important about recognizing the degree to which that patterning and messaging is present in the cultures and societies that you are living in, that will show up in our contemplative practice. There will be an internalized experience of wanting to get it as quickly as possible. That very pressure to get something fast, learn it fast so I can, is what we begin to learn about through mindfulness practice. That's one of the things we observe in our own mind and body and see, is this actually helping me? Where is this beneficial? Because there are benefits, of course, to being efficient. And there is a way that it begins to rob us of presence, of actually experiencing our life. It disconnects us from the present moment. So part of the process of mindfulness is to actually notice that tendency to want to do it quickly and get something. Okay, so that's number one. Number two, mindfulness practice itself can be learned very quickly. It's not hard. It's not complicated. It's very simple. I can give you all of the instructions in 10 minutes, but it's not easy to do. Simple but not easy, as one famous teacher once said. So I think it's better to think about it like playing an instrument or learning a craft. You can learn the rules of the music and maybe the basic notes in a few days, but it can be a lifetime process to really master it. Next question here. I was thinking a lot about specific situations that are triggering my anger and other reactions. Although I see that the anger reaction is coming and I know what's causing it, I still react with anger with that specific person or situation that hurt me. How do I overcome that? Thank you. It's a very important question, and in some ways a painful one. It's very painful when we can see the pattern that we're caught in. We can be aware of it, but we're still stuck in it. We're not able to do it differently. So I think there are different components for how to address this. Essentially, one of the things that's needed is to develop more capacity to tolerate the discomfort of the anger or the reaction. When we are angry, there's always something unpleasant that we are responding to. An unpleasant thought, an unpleasant feeling, an unpleasant stimulus. So notice what the unpleasantness is, and then bring your attention to that and feel the reaction and practice breathing, self-regulating, having more space, finding more space and groundedness inside to tolerate the discomfort of that reaction. You can do that in your mindfulness practice when the other person isn't even there. You just bring them to mind. Think about them. Think about the thing they said that got you angry. And then feel the reaction when they're not present and practice with it. So this is one way of doing it. The other thing that I think is very important with these kinds of situations in our life is because that situation is a relationship, sometimes we also need support from another relationship to change the dynamic. And this could be from a friend, this could be from a professional counselor, it could be through other training in communication or other relationship skills. So it may be that there are other psychological or emotional patterns that are driving your response that need to be discovered and addressed in relationship to explore, why do I get so angry? What is this about for me? What is it connected to from my past, if anything? And how do I heal the place inside that's getting stimulated? It's like sometimes, like when you have a bruise and then someone bumps into it, it hurts. It hurts a lot more than if you didn't have a bruise there. So oftentimes in our relationships where there are these places where we get very angry or we feel really hurt and scared and we withdraw, the thing the other person is doing is part of it. But the other part is what we bring to the moment, which is often some history of pain or injury in relationship. So we can work with the direct reaction and developing more awareness and balance, but it's also important often to look to our own history psychologically and emotionally and see, what am I bringing to the moment that I'm still carrying that's making me more prone to this response, and to address that.